Hello and welcome to week 7 of this video tutorial series for virtualracingschool.com with the global Mazda MX-5 Cup car. Following last week's Roval layout at Charlotte Motor Speedway, this week we visit the second oval venue on the calendar, the shorter and tighter Phoenix International Raceway. Despite the short lap, the road layout at Phoenix presents an extremely difficult challenge, forcing the driver to slow the car whilst cornering from speed and to find lines with late apexes which aren't at all obvious at first and require significant control and patience. So I've driven a lap to match the conditions used in the official series with the iRacing baseline setup and default weather. Your first lap here is noticeably faster in a stint as the tyres go off quickly, and so for qualifying you'll really have to nail your first flying lap. So we'll play the lap through first before going into further analysis. And so that was a 1 minute 7.954. There's probably a few more tenths in there. So yeah, if we take it back to the... So just finishing your out lap, you want to keep the car nice and high into the last corner on the oval, and then bring the car gradually down low. You don't have to meet the apron at the bottom as long as you carry a decent amount of speed across the start-finish line here. And then you want to be turning in fairly early. Much earlier than if you were going around the banking again. You want to be aiming for this cone at the bottom of the banking, and as you get closer, we're still flat out in 5th gear, where this wall kind of ends and kinks over to the left for the pit exit. You want to be aiming for that basically. So I get pretty close to it there. You can probably get a little bit closer if you're feeling brave. But you do want to be starting to brake at least on your first flying lap where you've got plenty of grip before halfway along this final portion of wall. So we'll just see that. So basically just as the car touches the apron, I'm on the brakes there. Fairly cautious on the brake pedal, roughly in the middle of the circuit at this point. And that's because I'm pretty much still turning the car. So if we just take that back. So we turn in from the banking, we're still turning, so we are still turning on the brakes, and that's why you can't afford to brake so hard. And then just let the car run out ever so slightly. I use this yellow pit exit line as a reference sort of line to follow. So you can drift a bit further away from it as long as you pull it back nice and tight, so you're pretty much on the edge of it when it finishes. So we'll see that bringing the car back over and kind of maintaining this line, and gradually as the wall begins to finish, we tighten the car up once again. So let's just have a look at my pedal inputs. This is quite a complex corner, and it's very, very easy to get wrong. So we're still braking at this point before the yellow line has finished, flipping the throttle down into third gear, and then as the yellow line finishes, we kind of get back on the throttle. Every lap is going to be slightly different though. What I'm trying to do there is just maintain the line. So obviously I was just a little bit too slow, and I felt that I had to get back on the power to maximize the grip that's available as the corner kind of opens up slightly. And then a bit further on it starts to tighten again, so as the end of the wall kind of comes into view, the corner really tightens up once again. So this is into turn 3, so you want to be shifting down into second gear, nice big blip so you don't lock up the rears, and continuing to brake right up into the apex. Now I'm just a little bit too tight here, so what I do is I kind of get back onto the throttle just to push my car out slightly. So we just see this line. Ideally you don't want to be getting as close to this cone as I am doing. Yeah, the ideal line is going to be about half a car's width from the cone, so over here somewhere really, but no more than that, otherwise you won't be able to get it back for the exit. The important thing really is to make sure that you don't pinch yourself on the exit too much, because you've immediately got the right hander, and that's kind of what I do. So I get back onto full throttle just to push the car out a bit wider and take advantage of the grip that's available. But what happens then is I just get on the curb a bit too much here for the right hander, and it induces, as you will see, some nasty oversteer there. It's okay though, I only have the slightest of lifts and managed to deal with it quite quickly and managed to keep good momentum, which is what you want. So the ideal line is going to be nice and tight here on the exit, and then just kind of following this white line, but ideally not taking too much of this curb unless you feel comfortable in kind of handling the inevitable oversteer like that. I mean, that's still quite a good line. Obviously this was a good lap. So up into fourth gear just before the left hand apex of turn 6 here. So again, you've got a wall here on the inside, you want to be aiming for that. Just be cautious when you run over this curb, it can upset the balance of the car. So we just see that I get just a tiny hint of oversteer once again on the exit, but you should be able to get through here flat out, no problem, on your first flying lap. And then just let the car run out wide, just slightly wide of the white line and the curb here. So all four wheels over there. You don't want to go much wider than that, otherwise you get a slowdown penalty. And then you start to turn in as the curb ends, bringing the car back over to the left, sighting this curb for turn 7. Now as you turn in here, you will need to apply the brakes before the apex, which I do just there, about 20-30%, and you have to be quite cautious. So I choose here to left foot brake, and that allows me to balance the car and prevent any oversteer by just trailing the throttle. So you'll see that, just breathing on the throttle there, just to prevent any oversteer. I still get a bit of oversteer, but a little bit of a slide is basically the fastest way, so you're at the optimal slip angle of the tyres. And then it's quite tricky into the right hander of turn 8, which is very, very tight. You have to get the car slowed down a lot, all the way down into second gear. So braking pretty much as the circuit kind of straightens briefly. And in terms of car positioning, you don't want to be allowing the car to go too wide, because then you'll tighten this entry even more than it needs to be. So just over halfway over to the right here in terms of the full width of the circuit. And so we're on the brakes now. Can't afford to brake very hard, because immediately we're pretty much turning again on the entry, dropping it down into second gear, still on the brakes, just trailing the brake, because you typically get some understeer here on the entry, so I'm trying to get the car to rotate. Now it's just a little bit wide of the optimal line here, That looks really wide at this point, but it's actually not too bad. Still about half a car width of optimal, but you don't want to be hitting that curb if you can help it, because once again it'll unsettle the car and you'll get some nasty oversteer, which you'll struggle to arrest as you're trying to put the power down pretty much from here on out, as we can see. So continuing to turn the car, the corner kind of opens up slightly but then tightens again into turn 9, so it's very, very difficult to put the power down throughout this sequence, and you really have to be quite patient with the throttle. So I'm still not at full throttle. Now I'm at full throttle, opening the steering there briefly. You'll notice there, just anticipating some oversteer. I don't want the car to slide on the exit because I'll lose momentum. Up into third, once again anticipating oversteer as I drop the clutch into third gear. The car is positioned really well here on the exit. You want to be nice and close to the apex for turn, I think this is either 9 or 10. It's 9. You don't want to clip this curb if you can help it. As we've discussed earlier, with similar corners, you'll upset the balance of the car and lose momentum. And then you want to be pretty much just taking the straightest route from the exit of 9 to the braking point for 11, which means running the car very close to the left-hand kink. I guess this is 10, but again, you don't want to touch that curb because it's quite tall and aggressive. Running down towards turn 11, the last real corner, and my braking reference here is pretty much just before the white line on the outside of the circuit begins. So there's a break in the white line, which you'll see. Just pause it here and then play it through slow motion. So the white line breaks up, there's a little dash, and then just before it starts again, pretty much in between the dash and the solid portion is where you want to be braking, at least as I've said on your first flying lap. And in terms of car positioning, don't go any further over to the right than half a car's width across the white line, otherwise you'll get a slowdown penalty. So this is pretty much where you need to be. Braking reasonably hard at first, down into second gear again, and just trailing the brake pedal into the apex to get nice rotation. And yeah, it's okay to clip the inside curb on this corner. If anything, if you do it right and you're off the pedals, notice how I'm off the pedals entirely as I'm doing this, it just helps the car rotate. And then as I roll back up onto the banking, that's pretty much when I pick up the throttle. So as I'm onto the banking, I pick up the throttle nice and fairly aggressively, fairly quickly there, straight to full throttle, nice commitment, and then just focusing on your upshifts, trying to keep them nice and clean and nice and fast. Now, there is a little bit of skill to the last corner on the oval, not as easy as Charlotte. Basically you want to have a bit of a late turn in, so you keep the car not quite as high as you would do on an outlap, but you want to keep the car kind of in the middle of the banking for the first part of the turn, and then gradually bring it down towards the apron just before the middle of the banking, the middle of the corner, and then pretty much try and keep it as low as you can, as long as you're not asking too much from the steering, and that should allow you to pretty much track up nicely on the limit of grip and carry a nice amount of speed down the straight across the start-finish line there. So that was a 1 minute 7.954. So you can find all setups, replays and telemetry for your own use and analysis on virtualracingschool.com, where you can also book one-to-one tuition with top drivers from the likes of Coanda Simsport. Good luck for this week, and feel free to post any questions or comments below. Thanks for watching.